I drove 7 hours for my brother's engagement party. My seat was taken by his fiancée's dog sitter. My mom whispered, "You don't have to be here." I just got in my car, opened my banking app, and canceled the event deposit. At 9:04 p.m., my dad texted, "Why did the venue ask USTO leave?" I got angry, and then, at that moment, I was thinking about how selfish they really were. And worse than that was the shame. The heat crawling up my neck when I realized the guests around me had heard what she said. They weren't even pretending not to listen. "You don't have to be here." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a dismissal. And it hit harder than she probably even meant it to, because it wasn't just about this party. It was about every single time I'd been pushed to the side to make room for Ryan or Dad's ego or my mom's version of appearances. I had driven 7 hours through heat, construction zones, and bumper-to-bumper traffic just to show up for my brother. I didn't have the time off to spare. I definitely didn't have the money, but I had sent them $3,000 like everyone else, no questions asked, because I thought that was what family did. I even left a note on the transfer. "Happy for you, bro. Let's celebrate big." That's what I'd written. I parked 2 streets over because their driveway and the surrounding road were crammed with luxury rentals and customized plates. Ryan always had a thing for the dramatic. When I got inside, I could already tell the vibe was wrong. It wasn't warm. It wasn't joyful. It felt curated, staged, like a reality show set. People glanced at me, but nobody said much. I walked toward the tables looking for the place cards with family names. I circled once, then again. No, Kenny. No extra seat. My name wasn't anywhere, so I asked, "What are the servers?" Nice guy, younger, told me all the seats were full. I pointed to the open chair that should have been mine at the end near my dad. He hesitated. Then he said, "Oh, that's Lauren's dog sitter." I just stared at him. This wasn't a mix-up. This was deliberate. My mom came over then. She didn't ask about the drive, didn't hug me, didn't even smile. Just dropped that line like it was no big deal. "You don't have to be here." I was standing 3 feet from the patio entrance and I could feel people watching. One woman next to the hors d'oeuvres table glanced away quickly. Someone else actually smirked. That was when I realized they made me the extra. The out-of-town relative who could be forgotten for the sake of aesthetics. The brother who wasn't polished enough to match the rest of the decor. So I left. I walked back to my car without saying a word, sat behind the wheel and just stared at the dashboard for a solid minute. Then I opened my phone, went to the banking app and pulled up the transaction. The $3,000 deposit I'd sent for this circus. I clicked cancel. It would take a couple of days to hit, but I didn't care. I wanted the process started. And then at exactly 9:04 p.m., the text came in from my dad. "Why are we leaving the party?" Not "Where are you?" Not "Is everything okay?" Not even a simple comeback. Just a demand like I'd broken something. I stared at that message and something snapped in me. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something colder. A kind of clarity I hadn't felt in a long time. I realized I had been financing this fantasy. Their polished, picture-perfect life, and I was the only one who still thought I needed to earn my place in it. I didn't respond. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, backed out of the driveway, and drove off into the night. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't done. They thought I was the easy one, the quiet one, the one who always took the hit. They were about to learn I was done playing that part. I didn't go far. Just parked in a dark corner of a Target parking lot a few miles away. Engine off, windows cracked. It was quiet enough to think, and I needed a second to sort out what came next, but I already knew the answer. I opened the event invoice that my mom had sent me 2 months earlier. It listed everything. Catering, furniture rental, floral design, a 6-person string quartet. Total cost $26,400 split between 9 people. They calculated it to the cent. My share was $2,933.33, but I rounded it up to $3,000 when I sent it. I scrolled through the message chain. That's when I noticed something interesting. My name was still on the vendor forms. They'd used my billing info for the dessert company and the flower guy and some champagne rental service I didn't even remember agreeing to. My deposit wasn't just a contribution. It was the deposit. Mine under my name, my card. I called the dessert place first. Told them I needed to put a hold on the payment due to a family issue. They were surprisingly understanding. Said they wouldn't charge the remainder until I gave the green light. Then the floral company. Same deal. It helped that I still had receipts and had communicated with them directly once or twice. I spent the next hours sending cancellation emails. Nothing too dramatic, just enough to delay things, hold charges, or freeze payouts. I wasn't trying to ruin the whole party. Not yet. I just wanted them to feel the crack in the wall. A little tension in their perfect night. By 11 p.m., I had put everything in motion. Then I drove across town to crash at my friend Nolan's place. He lived in a small guest house behind a bigger property and always had a spot open. He didn't ask too many questions, just handed me a spare blanket, nodded toward the couch, and offered me a beer. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb before I even laid down. When I woke up the next morning, it was chaos. Missed calls, 21 of them. Texts from my dad, my mom, my aunt, Ryan, even Lauren. The tone was escalating fast. I ignored them all. Around 10 a.m., Nolan and I were having coffee outside when a black SUV pulled into the gravel driveway. It was my parents. They didn't knock. They didn't wait. They came storming through the back gate like they owned the place. My mom looked furious. My dad was holding his phone like it was evidence. "You've humiliated us," he said. "No, I said you humiliated me. I just returned the favor." They went off. Accusations, guilt, tripping the works. How dare I ruin Ryan's night? How petty I was for. Storming off. I just let them talk. And when they were done, I said one sentence. "You now owe me $8,800. My dad blinked like he didn't hear me. "You heard me. I put $3,000 down under my name. I froze the rest of the vendors tied to that payment. You're going to cover those losses or those vendors can come after you since you all benefited from a service I paid for." Lauren arrived a few minutes later, dressed like she hadn't slept, still in party clothes. She tried to chime in. I didn't look at her. Nolan stood awkwardly by the steps, but I could tell he was enjoying the show. There was no good spin. No way for them to twist this. For once, I had leverage. I'm done being treated like a +1 in my own family. I said, "You want a clean party? Pay for it." I told them I'd be staying 2 more nights in town. If they wanted to scream, negotiate, or throw another tantrum, they could do it after I was gone. They didn't leave right away. My dad stood with his arms crossed like I was some contractor who skipped out on drywall work. My mom started pacing in short, stiff lines next to Nolan's grill, completely ignoring the fact that we were guests in someone else's home. She was talking fast, not to me, but toward the air, saying things like, "You're making a scene. This is petty. Ryan's night was ruined." As if she could narrate the situation into something more palatable. "You've humiliated us," my dad finally said again, as if repeating it would make it my fault. "No," I said. "You humiliated me. You just didn't think I'd respond." They hated that. Hated that I wasn't yelling or crying or begging for anyone to hear my side. I was calm. Too calm. That's when they knew they weren't going to get control back. Lauren showed up halfway through, still wearing the same outfit from the night before, but with a hoodie draped over it like that somehow made her part of the regular people. She tried the soft approach, started saying how this whole thing got blown out of proportion. I asked her a question. "You gave my seat to your dog sitter." She didn't answer right away, just shifted her eyes toward the ground. "I didn't know there wasn't room for you," she said eventually. So the dog sitter was a higher priority. More silence. Nolan stayed off to the side, leaning against the back steps, trying to pretend he was anywhere else. But he didn't interrupt, and I appreciated that. My mom stepped in again, her voice tight. "This is not how families treat each other." I laughed just once, not because anything was funny, but because that sentence made me feel like I was on a game show called Gaslight Me More. "Mom," I looked at her and said, "Family doesn't tell their son he doesn't have to be there. Family doesn't let a stranger take his spot at the table. Family doesn't call after the damage is done to act shocked when he walks out." Then I gave them the number. You owe me $8,800. They stared. I explained it in detail. The vendors, the deposits, the contracts, my name, my billing info, my card. I didn't scream. I didn't plead. I spoke like someone who was done playing dumb to keep the peace. They tried to argue. Of course, they did. My dad asked if I was really going to charge my own family. I told him I wasn't charging anyone. I was collecting. I paid for things you used. You want to be adults who host luxury events and make unilateral decisions? Then act like it. Pay your bills. Lauren tried to talk again, but I cut her off. I'm not negotiating with someone who thought I was beneath the guest list. You had your moment. This is mine. Eventually, they ran out of arguments. My mom called me cold. My dad called me ungrateful. Lauren didn't say anything else. Ryan didn't show up. I guess that was telling on its own. They left, not because they accepted anything, just because they had no leverage. They'd walked into the one place where they couldn't control the narrative, and it terrified them. The rest of the day, I stayed quiet. Nolan and I grilled burgers, watched a movie on his projector, and barely spoke about the situation. But before I went to bed, I took my phone off Do Not Disturb just long enough to see what had piled up. Ryan had texted me. I didn't know about the seat. I didn't mean for that to happen. No apology, no ownership, just damage control. I turned my phone back off and tossed it on the table. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider, then they could deal with the outsider version of me. And the next morning, they showed up again, this time with backup. Ryan was with them. Lauren, too. All of them standing in Nolan's gravel driveway at 8:47 in the morning like they were about to stage an intervention. Only this time, I wasn't answering the door alone. They knocked like cops. 3 sharp hits on the screen door and no pause before the second set. Nolan was standing behind me, barefoot, coffee mug in hand, and he looked at me like, "Are you sure you want this?" But I was already walking toward the door. Ryan was out front. Behind him stood my parents and Lauren, all dressed like they hadn't slept. Or maybe they'd all met up early for a strategy session on how to fix the PR disaster I'd become. Ryan spoke first. "Can we come in?" I stepped aside only because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of calling me dramatic for refusing. Nolan grabbed his keys and went out the back. He wasn't about to sit in on a family implosion. We stood in the middle of the living room. No chairs, no coffee offered. Just 4 people looking at me like they couldn't believe I wasn't apologizing. Ryan started talking about misunderstandings, that he hadn't seen the seating chart, that it was Lauren's planner, that the whole thing spiraled faster than he expected. I cut him off. "You had 6 weeks to check the guest list. You approved the table cards. You walked past me last night and didn't say a word." He looked down and for a second I thought maybe he was going to own it. But then Lauren jumped in. "This isn't about a chair. No, I said it's about the way all of you look at me like I'm the extra. The one who doesn't matter. The one who pays, shows up, shuts up, and still gets treated like a mistake." My mom's arms were folded. My dad was standing like a statue, jaw tight. "Stop pretending this is new." I said, "When I got laid off, nobody called. When I couldn't make Thanksgiving 2 years ago, you told people I was going through something. When I finally get here after a 7-hour drive, you let someone who walks your dog take my place at the table." Ryan muttered something about not wanting a scene. I stared at him. "You didn't want a scene? You threw a $26,000 party. You hired a violinist to play Post Malone. You had an eye sculpture of your initials. But me sitting at the family table was going to ruin the image." Lauren whispered something to my mom. My mom didn't respond, just kept watching me like I was an insect she didn't want to touch. "You want to talk about scenes?" I said, "Let's talk about how you humiliated me in front of strangers. Let's talk about how you told me I didn't have to be there in front of guests. You didn't just exclude me. You made sure people saw it." That's when my dad finally said something. "This is still your brother's moment. You're making it all about you." I laughed. "I made it about me the second I led the deposit. I'm not paying for a party where I wasn't even welcome." He opened his mouth, but I wasn't done. "You owe me $8,800. I don't care how you split it. I'm not chasing vendors. I'm not covering charges. And I'm not disappearing just because it's inconvenient for you." My mom asked if I was doing this out of spite. No, I said I'm doing this because for the first time in my life, I finally understand that I don't owe any of you. Silence. The room was quiet after that. No one knew what to say. They had come here expecting an argument they could win. A breakdown they could contain, but I wasn't melting down. I was finished. They left not long after. Ryan said he'd figure something out. My dad walked out without another word. My mom didn't look at me. Lauren was the last to leave, and she didn't even close the gate behind her. That night, I packed my things. One more night in town and I was gone. No goodbyes, no calls. Let them sit with it. The plan was to leave early the next morning. No drama, no notes, just gone. Nolan offered to drive me halfway. Said he had some errands in the next town over anyway. I was folding my clothes into my duffel when my phone lit up. It was an email. Subject: Final payment notice. Aurora Catering. I opened it expecting it to be a follow-up from one of the vendors I'd already paused. But this one was new. It was a late-stage invoice that had somehow slipped through my filter. Due today under my name. Total amount $3,600. I read it twice. Then I called them. Turns out my dad had listed me as the primary event liaison on the contract for the catering team. He'd never told me. They had already charged my card for the deposit weeks ago. Now, the balance was pending, and if I didn't cancel it today, they'd run the full charge by 5 p.m. I hung up and just sat there, phone in my lap, barely blinking. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was calculated. They didn't just take advantage of me. They expected me to not notice, to just swallow it, pay up, disappear. That's when I decided to go back. Not to make a scene, not to beg for anything, but because if this was the end of things, I wasn't going to leave any room for misunderstanding. Nolan didn't even ask questions. He just tossed me the keys to his spare car and said, "Go finish it." I drove to Ryan and Lauren's place, not the event house, but their condo on the other side of town. The lights were on and Lauren's car was out front. I knocked once. Lauren answered. She looked stunned. "I'm not here for another argument," I said. "I'm here to tell you I found the invoice, catering, my name, my card. Another $3,600. She blinked fast, then stepped back and let me in. Ryan was on the couch. He looked like he hadn't slept. Maybe he finally understood what this had become. "You're using me like a bank account," I said. "And then you pretend I'm the selfish one." He didn't deny it. Lauren said something about not realizing I was still listed as the contact. I cut her off. "No more explanations. I'm canceling that payment too. And if they charge me, I'm sending all of you the bill. I'll take it to court if I have to." Ryan finally looked up. "You'd go that far?" I nodded. "You've left me with nothing else." And then something I didn't expect happened. Lauren stood up, walked to the kitchen, and came back with an envelope. She handed it to me without saying anything. Inside was a check, exactly $3,000. For the deposit, she said, "The one you already paid." I stared at it. Part of me wondered if this was guilt or if she just wanted to get me out of their lives without legal drama. I didn't care. I took the check and said, "Then that makes it $5,800 left." Nobody spoke. I walked out. Back at Nolan's place, I dropped the check on the table and sat in silence for a long time. That was it. The break. The thing that couldn't be undone now. Not a misunderstanding. Not a bad night. A deliberate use of me financially, emotionally, completely. They had expected me to be quiet. They had no idea how loud I could be when I finally spoke. The next morning, I left just before sunrise. The air was heavy, but still. Nolan handed me a thermos of coffee and gave me a quiet nod. Neither of us were big on dramatic goodbyes, which I appreciated. I took one last look at his little backyard and pulled out of the gravel driveway without saying a word. I had only been there 3 days, but it felt like a year had passed. Or maybe I just aged one. About 20 minutes outside the city, my phone started buzzing again. I ignored the first few calls, but the texts kept coming. I glanced at one while I was at a gas station from my dad. "We need to talk before you leave," from my mom. "Come by the house. Don't leave like this." Even Ryan tried again. "Let's talk. Just us." They all sounded different now. Less confident. Less sure I just fall back in line. I didn't reply, but curiosity got the better of me. I turned the car around. When I pulled up to my parents' house, they were waiting in the living room. Ryan was already inside pacing. My mom was sitting stiffly on the arm of the couch. My dad was by the fireplace, arms folded again. Lauren wasn't there this time. I didn't sit down. My dad started with the usual. You've made your point. Then something about not letting this drag out like I was the one creating the mess. I asked him point blank, "Are you going to pay the $5,800? He didn't answer at first. My mom looked over at him, but still nothing. "I'll give you $3,000, he finally said. "That's fair." I laughed once. Not a real laugh. More like disbelief. "You're offering me fairness now." He stepped toward me and my mom stood up like she thought she could mediate something, but I held up my hand. "No, you don't get to negotiate. Not after everything. Not after the way you made me feel in front of strangers. Not after telling me I didn't have to be there." My voice didn't rise. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I pulled the catering invoice from my back pocket and dropped it on the coffee table. "This is yours now. I've spoken to them. They're expecting payment today. You can either call them or let them come for you. I don't care either way." Ryan tried to speak up, but I cut him off too. "I've got nothing left to say to any of you, and I meant it." They didn't try to stop me when I walked out. No yelling, no tears, no parting shots. Just silence. The kind that doesn't feel peaceful but hollow. The moment I got back on the freeway, I put my phone on silent and shoved it into the glove box. By the time I got home that evening, I felt like I could breathe again. Not because things were solved, but because I had finally stopped letting them drag me underwater. There were no more group texts, no calls, nothing. And for once, that was exactly how I wanted it. 3 days. That's all it took to pull the curtain back and see what I'd been pretending wasn't there for years. No more favors. No more deposits. No more silence. Just peace. And I wasn't about to give that up for anyone. The update. It had been a month of silence. No missed calls, no texts, not even a second-hand update from some cousin. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I'd started sleeping better. I wasn't jumping at every notification. I thought maybe they'd finally gotten it. Then one Sunday afternoon, there was a knock. I checked the peephole. My stomach sank. My parents, Ryan, Lauren, standing on my porch like it was Thanksgiving, and they were bringing pie. I opened the door halfway. "What are you doing here?" We thought enough time had passed. My mom said as if a calendar could erase what they did. Ryan looked hopeful. Lauren held a pastel gift bag like she was delivering peace. Nobody smiled. They just looked expectant. I let them in. I wanted to hear what they thought would happen. Took 5 minutes to see nothing had changed. My dad brought up the catering invoice. Said he had a guy who might be able to negotiate it down. My mom mentioned moving forward with family holidays. Lauren asked if I had any dates in mind for the wedding RSVP. Not one word of apology. Not one sentence acknowledging the party, the money, or what they did to me in front of strangers. It was like watching someone try to hit rewind on a fire. I stood up and opened the door. "You need to leave." My mom frowned like I was being unreasonable. Ryan just looked confused. "You think a month passed and I'd forget?" I said, "You didn't come here to fix anything. You came to clean your conscience." Lauren tried to hand me the gift bag. I didn't take it. "I'm not coming to the wedding." I said, "I'm not coming for the holidays. I'm done." They stood there like they didn't believe me. "I gave you every chance," I said, "and every time you proved exactly who you are." They walked out slowly, still looking back like I might stop them. I didn't. The gift bag stayed unopened on the table. I tossed it in the trash an hour later without even checking what was inside. That was the last time I ever opened the door for them.